Greetings. Uh, a presentation about the spread of religion is basically how you might use a clickable map, and we'll show that URL as to where you can find that map on the web uh, a little bit later on in the presentation near the end. Religion's important because it's been a strong influence on human behavior, and it's a kind of a good example of cultural diffusion about the way certain ideas would spread from one place to another. So we're going to look at the 6 religions that have the most believers today and focus on 2 related questions. Where did they start? And how and where and why did they spread? Content expectations for this are in several different grades because this could go into a world geography class, it can go into a world history class, and it's why we put it out in the package of clickable maps. According to many historians, Hinduism is actually the oldest surviving religion. It started in South Asia, modern day India and Pakistan, and it really didn't spread very far. I mean, there are a few living in different places around the world, but almost 95% of them are in South Asia there. If you add on the clickable map, if you add the mountains, you can get an idea as to why they didn't spread much farther. That particular part of the world is almost completely surrounded by land where it is very hard to travel. Some of the highest mountains in the world, some of the driest deserts in the world. And so a religion isn't going to spread into a region that doesn't have anybody living in it. Simple idea, but kind of complicated. And yet, Buddhism also started in South Asia, but it started hundreds of years later. And by that time, people had set up trading networks that stretched all over Eurasia, from China to Europe and North Africa, all over South Asia. A number of Buddhist monks went along with traders on boats around to China. A little bit later, other Buddhist monks went along with the trader caravans on the Silk Roads that went between Europe and China. Still later, and a lot more slowly, some Buddhist monks climbed the rugged hills and steep valleys of Southeast Asia. Today, Buddhists live in many places throughout Southeast and East Asia, places that could be reached by those trading networks. And surprisingly, not very many are living in India itself because so many people were already Hindu in that environment. A surprisingly important place for the development of religion is this tiny piece of land in Southwest Asia. This land had a whole bunch of different names at different times in history. I mean, it was called Phoenicia and Canaan and Judea and the Levant, Israel, Palestine, and probably 20 or 30 other names. Moabites lived in there, and Elamites lived there, and Philistines lived there, and so on. Why is that area so important? Because this is where the trade networks from Europe and Asia came together. They came together south of the Black Sea and north of the Mediterranean Sea. And some people call this area the crossroads of history. The religion that we now call Christianity started in that area, but it's actually a more complicated story. The most important early Christian missionary was a Jewish man named Paul. He came from a town called Tarsus, which coincidentally was the major trading city in Asia Minor, modern Turkey. It was the major place where people from the Silk Roads from China met the people from the Mediterranean and transferred the cargo across there. So he was really plugged into international trading networks. And he was a Roman citizen, which meant that he could travel essentially free on a whole lot of Roman ships all over the Mediterranean. He wound up writing a letter to the Romans that's part of the Christian Bible. As Christianity spread, the Roman Empire was also becoming larger. and it kind of spread along with it. And then as time went on, that about the year 285, the Roman Empire was split in half and had two separate capitals. The city of Rome remained the capital of the Western Roman Empire, and the city of Byzantium, which was then renamed Constantinople, it's now called Istanbul, uh, that became the capital of the eastern part. And at that point, Christianity made the first big split. The Eastern Orthodox kind of Christianity spread north and east from Constantinople, and it is now the major religion in places like Greece, Serbia, Ukraine, and especially in Russia. Uh, there is a small separate group of Orthodox Christians in the highland country of Ethiopia, and people can trace that back to one of the disciples, Philip. Meanwhile, the Roman Catholic kind of Christianity spread north and west from Rome. It's important throughout many parts of Europe, especially in Italy, Spain, France, and Poland. And Italy, Spain, France, Portugal took that Roman Catholic religion with them when they claimed colonies on other continents. The map on the top shows the major colonies claimed by Spain on the clickable map. And the map on the bottom shows the major concentrations of Roman Catholic churches today. And you say, but there's a couple gaps on that. Is it because Spain wasn't the only overseas colonizer? Missionaries from Spain spread Catholic Christianity to Mexico and South America across the Pacific. Meanwhile, Portugal spread it to East Africa and to the Brazil area of South America. And French trappers, missionaries, and farmers brought Catholic Christianity when they settled in Canada. About 600 years after Christianity began, the religion called Islam started in the city of Mecca on the west side of the Arabian Peninsula. Here again, knowing something about the old trade networks is important because Mecca turns out to be one of the major links on these trading networks, particularly the frankincense trade coming northward toward Europe and the gold trade running east-west across Africa. And when you put those two together, you can see how Islam spread along these trading networks across Africa and eastward across northern India and down into Indonesia. And the last of the major religions in terms of the number of people is Protestant Christianity. This started out as a split from the Roman Catholic Church in Northern Europe in the 1500s. And the British Empire was the biggest force in the spread of Protestantism because where the British colonies went, other European peoples, particularly Dutch and German and Scandinavian, would follow sometime after that, which meant that they were moving to places like Eastern North America, like West Africa, like the highlands of East Africa. And so when you put all of these religions together on one map, which is what you can do with a clickable map, the result just looks terribly complicated and confusing. That's a lot easier to understand if you remember where they started and how they spread, what was causing that spread to occur. Hinduism starting in South Asia, but starting early and just not spreading very far. Buddhism spreading eastward from where it started on two trading networks. Islam spreading both east and west from Mecca along the gold and frankincense trade routes. And traders with ships carrying them over to the Spice Islands of Indonesia and to the area of the delta that was between the Buddhist and the Hindu areas in South Asia. Orthodox Christianity spreading north and east, but not west, from Constantinople. Roman Catholic Christianity spreading north and west from Rome, but not very far east. And then when Europeans started to form colonies on other countries, spreading throughout Central and South America, and other places like the Philippines that were important in the Spanish trading networks from Mexico. And then finally, Protestant Christianity spreading from Northern Europe to the places that people from Britain, Germany, Scandinavia moved, which means North America, parts of Africa, and Australia. So when you see a color map of religions like this, it helps for you to remember where they started, when they started, and how they spread. That knowledge can help you understand the situation in those parts of the world where religious conflicts are happening today. Places like Central Asia, like Syria, like Nigeria, like northern Indonesia or Myanmar. Um, PowerPoint ends up with how does this affect the United States? Well, people move to the United States from many parts of the world. As a result, we've got believers of all of these religions living in different places. Uh, St. Anne de Detroit is the second oldest Catholic church in North America. A Dutch Reformed Protestant church in Western Michigan, named for a province in the Netherlands. A German Lutheran Protestant church in Northern Ohio. I know that church pretty well because I grew up in that area and some of the people were still speaking German when I was a child. There are small Protestant congregations meeting in a mall in Cleveland, Ohio, an Islamic mosque near Detroit, a Buddhist monastery in upstate New York, a Hindu temple in California, an Orthodox church in the mining area of Pennsylvania. In other words, if you know where the people from these communities came from in the world, if you remember what religion was important over there, you can see what religion is important in different parts of the United States today. All of the maps in this presentation came from the clickable map called Religions that's out on this website here. So you should check that out and just nose around and see what's going on. And while you're there, you might look at the website a little bit higher about empires and things like that. A bunch of printable maps, student activities, and a matching quiz can be downloaded from the Giants website on that URL.